distasteful involvement with Lucia Greenberg, claiming that it has nothing to do with Hitler and the Holocaust. Artie argues that his story makes everything more human. Which of these statements do you agree with? Should the Holocaust be treated as an event so catastrophic that it makes private experience irrelevant? How do other books and movies about the Holocaust, like Schindler's List, Night in a Diary of a Young Girl, deal with the perseverance?
I think that I agree with Art in that when he says that it makes everything like more human, because like every time we kind of like learn about the Holocaust, we like it's just like over and over we learn that like the Nazis killed the Jews and like put them in concentration camps and stuff. But then like the way we learn about that kind of like makes it in a way how like the Nazis viewed the Jews, because we just see it as like a big group of people that were being like killed, and instead of like kind of seeing it as like these are individual people, and that kind of like makes you take a second to like look at like that these are people with like normal lives that like kind of like, you know, that like they live their everyday lives, and just the Nazis like took that away from them and just like acted like they were rodents. So I think it's good that he included these stories.
I totally agree with what you said. I'm sorry. I said that adding the personal touches into the book or any like art form can make it better, especially with the Holocaust, for people who are just learning about it. Because it's like this book on pages 190 and 191, it shows like the Jews are just being like treated worse and worse, especially when they couldn't do like a job quickly enough, and like it's just really hard to like see that, and like it's really sad to see that, and like through the pictures it's like easier to know what's going on, and I appreciate the artwork.
Yeah, I agree with Art how he added the more human-like scenes. It's because we already know so much about the Holocaust, and there's so many books and movies about like what happened and like the history of it. But what makes it very significant why Art added like all this these stories of his father is because like it's more of a story instead of like a history kind of based kind of book. And I think it made it more interesting to learn more about it. And it probably didn't go over every detail of what happened during the Holocaust, but it did include a story of like a man going through the Holocaust, and now he's a survivor. Like he survived, and now he's talking to his son about it. I think that just makes the story so much more significantly interesting, because it's an actual story, and the images with the dialogue. It's an actual kind of story. It's not like a history book or anything.
Yeah, I completely agree. It makes it way more personal. Like it's shown on page 37 as well, and like with him with like Vladimir showing everyone like writing the story way more personally. It's I'm lost for words. It's oh yeah, it makes it different from other Holocaust stories, because like he said, we already know a lot about the Holocaust, and getting a more personal story is makes it way more intuitive.
I agree a lot with what's been said before, that how like it's important to kind of like remind people that the people who were victims of the Holocaust, they lived like actual lives and had hobbies and families before all these horrible things happened. It's kind of scary to think how someone could live just like a very normal life, kind of like we do, and then they die in like really horrific ways, like I forget which page it is, but like towards the end, like being burned alive pretty much, and they said they were like re-scooping the fats and they burn faster. And also another reason why I think it was kept in is because I feel like you can't really tell the story of how Vladek met Anya without bringing in Lucia before, because on like page 23, when he's like engaged to Lucia, he gets a phone call from her mother saying that Lucia wrote a letter to them and say like anonymously like explaining that like he's having affairs with women and other stuff, and it kind of like it could have jeopardized their relationship, and I think that's kind of important to add, just for characterization, also to show like what their relationship was like, pretty much.
I agree with about everything that everyone said. I think that looking at it from a more personal point of view, it really hit me hard to actually see what was actually going on. Because you just hear all the documentaries, they just tell the events that happened, whereas this was like a personal story of someone who was actually in the Holocaust.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what everybody's been saying. I think that when it's more generalized, it doesn't have as much of an emotional aspect to it. One thing I noticed was on page 18 when Vladek went on he was talking to Anya and they got some coffee or whatever. He talked about how he's always dreamed of going to America and he has a business, and I think kind of planting this into our head for later on, it makes what he's lost more real. Like he wanted to go to America, but he's going through all this, and he had a business, but now it's gone. So I think that makes the reader feel it more.
Yeah, I think because the story's kind of about Vladek, I would say his personal stories through the Holocaust kind of mirror his story through the actual Holocaust, because throughout the whole book you kind of get this struggle to return to his old life. He wants to be with Anya again. He wants to get out of the concentration camps. And at the end we get the, resolution. He finally is with Anya again. But it's kind of fruitless because even though he escapes the Holocaust, he kind of lives with the burden it put on him, and Anya kills herself. So it kind of feels like even though he survived, he is kind of been spoiled by the Holocaust. So
Something I would like to add for why art involves personal stories of Vladek, they really show how he changed from before the war, after the war, how much he changed, the Holocaust really changed him as a person. He was on page 37, he was more romantic with Anya, and then on page 106, you see how he had a terrible relationship with Mala. They don't get along very well. So that kind of changed, it changed him not only is he more compulsive and less he is very conservative. He had to save all the cereal in his cereal box, and then he tries to return it. So it's he really changed him mentally.
I agree with that. It's more like a personal story, like Trevor said, about it's not just the facts on top of facts. It's like a story, because they could have just included Vladek's whole story without putting little bits in between when the present day or when Art was writing the book, when they're having all the interviews, but just kind of allows you to connect with them more to the person instead of just going through the story of Vladek surviving the Holocaust.
I agree with both of you because if Art didn't include all the present day stuff, all the stories between Anya and Vladek or Lucia and Vladek, we wouldn't really have seen a humorous or the good side of Vladek. We would have just seen all the harsh parts from Vladek where he is shouting at his son or shouting at Moloch or doing something or throwing out Artie's coat for no reason. So
yeah, setting up two time frames also gives the reader an idea of the direct impacts of the Holocaust, and then the later impacts of the Holocaust that kind of resonated throughout generations, the ones that Art feels, as well as the one that Vladek's experienced directly.
About 10 minutes.
Did everyone get a chance to talk?